Hello all, hope you're doing well today. So we see a lot online these days about how you challenge the liberal regime and the system and so on, but I think very often we underestimate the true depth of the problem. I mean, it's bad. Further to that, when we don't truly understand the depth of the problem, we don't really know what to do in response. And I think that can lead to many people even being manipulated in their response, because in a sense you're acting just like the system wants you to do because it's playing 5D chess, while many of us are just acting on things as we see them. So here's 5 harsh truths we must face about the modern world if we're to get serious about the trouble we're in and trying to find a way out of it if there is one. Number 1, the decline of Western man is the root of the problem, not the symptom. So we hear a lot at the moment about the state of the Western world and what's going on in the West, this sort of consumer comatose society and so on. But we almost act as if that's happened because of the prior actions of given governments or the regime or whatever. But properly understood, that decline actually starts within. I've said before the lovely phrase I like that demons enter through the hole of the absent father. And this is a phrase that comes from Robert Bly. He wrote a book called Iron John about male initiation and how when you don't have a father to guide you, all sorts of damage can come into your life. We've all seen that in life, whether it's a young teenager getting mixed up in drugs or whatever else. The point is that can also be scaled to a culture or even a civilization. And I would say because we've forgotten our tradition, God the Father as it's represented, it's meant that we've forgotten that hierarchy, that structure, what our own spiritual discipline means, our own centre is, reverence for the hierarchy and order, and therefore we've been open to attack from all manner of forces, evil forces really, that have usurped the natural order of things and essentially rendered Western man, like I say, in a comatose state, like King Theoden with worm tongue in his ear. We can also see this has happened within our tradition itself. One thing I often speak about is love and what Christian love truly means. But in even saying the word, many people are going to wince because they've been hammered with this idea of love as feminine, soppy, come here and give me a cuddle, that sort of thing. And with that as well, it's played into a lot of the woke ideology and so on. But all of that is really symbolic of the overtake by the feminine energy, civilizationally speaking. There is a very strong masculine strand in love. There's obviously masculine and feminine. They're one ultimately, but let's not get into the mysticism now. The masculine pole of it, however, is something more like challenge. I guess we could describe it today as tough love. It's that which evolves the man to be better. He goes through trials and hardship and he doesn't understand why. Again, we could apply it to the teenager. He's, 12, 13, 14, and his father's challenging him to go and do difficult things, and you don't quite know why. But as you develop through them, you realise you're getting a standard of ability, a competence in dealing with difficulty and challenge. You're seeing that you can overcome. That's the fatherly love. But of course, that doesn't really happen in our society anymore. It's lots of sort of cuddles and, be tolerant and kind. And it's all very much got into this extreme feminine pole. Now, again, once we have this collapse and we don't have any foundation anymore, we can see how this has led to all of the wild political ideologies that have come in, the cultural decay. Everything's focused again around the idea of consumption and immediate pleasure because of the collapse within, because of the lack of order, the reverence and the discipline within, which would once hold us firm as individuals and as a society. Point number 2 is there's nowhere left to run anymore. You see videos of boomers really saying, if I was young today, I would just leave. And it's really a residue of the individualistic mindset that was imbued in them. I've said many times, I don't think they realised how their liberal individualism was foundationed upon a homogeneity within their own nation and the embers of a tradition which kept things relatively stable. Now that's all gone now. And when boomers often look at the world, they say, I would leave. Have a look at this.
You were in your 20s today. What would you do?
I'd leave.
You'd leave?
I'd certainly leave the country now. I think it's going to the dogs.
Emigrate.
Immigrate.
The way the country is now, I would emigrate.
Immigrate? Why do you say that?
I just think this country's on its way down. I just don't think it offers much for young people now.
Emigrate.
Why would you do that?
Just think everything's going to pot in England.
Get out of this country.
Did you say you left the country?
Yeah.
Where did you go?
South Africa and Australia.
Move abroad.
Now, I don't want to have a go at boomers because they're products of their time, really. But we have to realise now that you just can't afford this sort of individualism for several reasons. Number one, you just can't escape modernity. Wherever you go in the Western world, the same process is happening. Canada is as far gone as Britain. Sweden is as far gone as Britain. Ireland is as far gone as Britain. Australia is pretty much on the way. America is all pretty much blanked out by MAGA, but the demographics are the same. They're going the same way. It's unavoidable wherever you run to. Of course, you can go to the Middle East, to Dubai, or maybe to Asia, and sure, you could probably have lots of money and a nice life. But again, basically, you've just left. You've left the West to decay. And again, it's pure individualist thinking. Now, this leads us to the other point. There's nowhere left to run online. There's nowhere left to run through escapism either. All of the things that we engage in to try and, again, sort of nullify the effects of modernity. I think we're going to have to wake up to the reality that we're going to have to stay eventually. We're going to have to be like, look, there's nowhere left to go. We may as well actually start with what we've got here and try and root ourselves once more. And again, I think that really begins with a reconnection with tradition, rootedness, faith. Even if you can't have faith in God, at least something aligned with tradition and some sort of inner order which organises us. Because you see, groups that succeed are groups that are organised and have coherence. And it's a wonderful thing when it works, no matter the tradition, no matter the people. It's always admirable. And this is why I also think another harsh truth with regards to this is I don't really buy into lots of the nationalist thing because, as I've said many times, you're not really going to do much alone as one nation because, again, you're up against the whole of the globalist system. You'll just be destroyed. And further to that, again, so many of the nations are going through the same thing. So it seems to me the only way forward is sort of a paradox of internationalism, which I know is against the principles of nationalism, but it's the only way you can have a bloc big enough to challenge globalist liberal power. Not to mention what I'd personally like to see as a reawakening of the Western tradition. I mean, this is probably just hopeful thinking, but there is strong philosophical backing for that. Again, that would be awakening of Christendom, probably evolved for a new age with other elements added in, probably an emphasis on Greek philosophy, Platonism, arguably even the sort of pagan strand, as many people are drawn to that. But there is strong philosophical backing for that. And more importantly, that is much more harmonious with other traditions around the world who are also concerned about what's going on with the globalist liberalism, which is going for everybody. Right now, it's sort of using all the groups of the world to gang up on the West, but there will come a time where, again, lots of the other peoples around the world think, hang on, you're doing to us what you did to the West. They won't like that. So there could be an opportunity there for some sort of harmony. Again, I think another harsh truth with regards to this, there being nowhere left to run, I'm not talking tomorrow when I say this, but in the long-term future, decades, I'm talking, I personally think borders could shift. Traditions will change. Cultures will shift. The idea of returning to the sort of 50s idyll that you see on social media, you have these lovely organised societies. First of all, that's not going to happen. Because again, we've lost the tradition. So it's not just if you have, this homogenous nation, it will go back to the 50s. You need the tradition with it. It wasn't just the people, the demographics. It was also, or at least the embers of a tradition and a way of life which kept some sort of order. That needs to be reawakened as well. And the way that you do that, in my view, is to go forward, not backwards. Harsh truth number 3 is we're all lost to living in a hedonist regime. Many of us aren't even aware of this. Some of us do better with it than others. But the harsh truth is that nothing can really get started because we're lost in this mass hedonist conditioning. It's all about consumption. So much of our lives are rooted around how we can change our conscious state via the things that we imbibe, be that media, be that booze. There are so many different ways we do this. Now, I think this is something we have to become deeply aware of, and why this return, if you like, to a deeper spiritual energy is so important, because when you're in this world, you're almost basically like you're drugged, and you can't really wake up to the true vitality within. You can't really see things as they are, and you're lost in a system which moves extremely quickly, which can control your emotions with the click of a button. And we've really lost, again, any sense of inner sovereignty, which is absolutely vital when you're waking up to how the world can manipulate you. You think as well about many of the things that we do imbibe, much of this comes from a black market that really keeps the economy turning over. I'm talking Deliveroo riders, the drug market, which is absolutely huge, even things like prostitution, and even just people being employed outside of the knowledge of the state. You know, these basically allow businesses to function. They wouldn't be able to keep the lights on otherwise, and then the government gets a taxable income, So they all know what's going on, but the point is we're all just basically living off this system, which is rooted, again, in this black market, so we can consume. Everything is about consumption because consumption means growth, and we're locked in this just speeding ball of hedonism, which just goes on and on and on. And of course, I'm not trying to, lay into people here. I know you're tired from work. People need that space, but increasingly the things that we engage in are just part of the same hedonist regime, which keeps us in that hypnotized state. Another thing, just quickly with regards to this, that I think is coming, I saw recently there was some news that the Labour Party want to say if you earn over £45,000, you're not a working person. Well, you can see what they're trying to do here. Many people are saying, what's this about? I thought immediately what they're trying to do is create or state there's a massive working class. They're trying to shift the class definitions because you're all going to be poorer. Basically, the middle class is going to be squeezed, the rich will get richer, and then the working class will just grow. And that will allow, of course, the Labour Party types to change their messaging about how they still represent the working class and so on. Basically, they've just made everyone working class. But the point is here that we're trapped in this system where really via the worship of pleasure, novelty and consumption, we think that we're getting some sort of freedom, but it's really fool's gold. It's short-termism. It's this slavery to appetite. True liberty really begins with renunciation of these things. And again, this is why we need this great return. But I think it's fair to say, how can modern man renunciate these things? Because he's so alone spiritually. Who are you going to go to? That Moolally woman, Doolally Moolally, head of the Anglican Church. What's she going to do? She's going to tell you to, worship BLM and go to a gay wedding. So there's not much help we're going to get from the tradition, which is, again, why we just have to wake up to this stuff on our own and start to do what we can. Harsh truth number 4, the age of deception and mass information has already begun a long time ago. What this is going to lead to soon, or if it's not already here, is the AI revolution and misinformation with that. We can already see how bad it is because, as I said in yesterday's video, you look at all the information, all the views online going out all the time. Everyone wants to grab your attention. Everything's dramatic. You're a retard if you don't believe me. You're stupid if you don't know this. And it's kind of making us schizophrenic. You don't know where your anchor is anymore. It's very hard to stay still and steady in this world. You're being pulled from pillar to post. Now, I started to think about this when the BBC, again, yesterday, basically misreported a story about Rupert Lowe calling for capital punishment. I think they said something like he was calling for capital punishment for asylum seekers when he was saying, everyone who's committed one of these heinous crimes and the guilt is clear and obvious. Now, again, it's just shocking because the BBC, obviously the spotlight's on them at the moment for lying, and it's just done that easily. You could say it's an accident, but is it really? Does anybody trust the BBC or the mainstream media anymore? The same thing was done on Politics Joe. It's a leftist outlet, and they said an apology to Rupert Lowe afterwards. But as Rupert Lowe rightly pointed out here, he stated, well, let's see if this apology gets as many views as your original post. That's a very good point, because in the era that's coming, if we're not already there, apologies don't matter because you've got the misinformation out there. So again, a lot of these big businesses will know, big media businesses, you can put out the misinformation, print an apology, oh, we got it wrong, we're sorry, but the serum is in. You've already got it out there and pushed things your way politically. And that, of course, starts a war of misinformation. This is the other side of it as well that I think is just becoming very clear. We've been hammered really since the COVID era with this idea of misinformation. Anything outside of the liberal regime is misinformation. And of course, there is misinformation outside of the liberal regime. Of course, you need to cross-reference what you're reading, what you're hearing, what you're saying. We all need to take our own time to do our own research. But the point is, we've been figuring out misinformation works both ways. And the liberal regime, as represented here by Labour's Emily Thornberry, are really just taking a line of democracy's under threat, which is really just part of their own misinformation.
Democracy is under threat. I don't mean to sound alarmist, but the truth is that there are people out there who are trying to undermine our democracies by spreading deliberate lies, by trying to manipulate us. Remember what happened after the murder of those little girls and the deliberate lies, the manipulation that took place on social media, which sparked riots and the most terrible threats to our country. That's what's going on, and it's going on a national scale.
Now, as we've learnt over the years, when Labour Party types do this and they say, oh, democracy's under threat, what they mean is things aren't going the way I want them to go. It's the same with the Labour Party. It's the same with the BBC. And this is a wonderful tweet from Peter Hitchens. It's so good when he's at his best, Peter Hitchens. I've sort of given up on him because he's so truculent, but when he's at his best, he's a real gem. He's having a chat with someone on Twitter here, and he's stating here that slick modern Blairism adopted by the BBC is far to the left of steam-powered heritage movements like Corbynism. Corbyn should really be curated by the National Trust. And this is really wise stuff from Hitchens. He's obviously been around for a long time, and can see that the BBC, the Labour Party, they'll always represent themselves as these rational centrists in the middle. We're not too far right, we're not too far left. But in reality, there is, as Hitchens calls it, quite a slick operation there for their own worldview. He doubles down here with another good point. Centrists is the name given to themselves by the dominant political faction, which happens to be the Blairite left. It has no objective meaning. Of course they are left-wing, when speaking about the modern, quote, centrists there. So what we're seeing here is really the beginnings of the new information war, which is all about framing yourself as the rational centrist person while putting out the same misinformation as everybody else. But again, it's all about who gets the information out there quickly, how you can sway public mood efficiently. This is another one to really watch in the future. This is going to be really big. This is Charlotte Gill. I think she's some political commentator on the right. She points out, she's obviously joking, definitely a real person behind this account. She's taken one of these accounts. I think these lean left, and they're clearly AI. But, the inexperienced boomer, they just think, oh, that's a pretty girl. And of course, they just spout out, rhetoric. You'll even get these AI bots sometimes arguing with each other. Who's behind them, who knows? But basically, they're often women, attractive women, which again, thirst traps for men who, basically aren't that digitally savvy, social media savvy, and just think, oh, it's an attractive woman. You get them on the left and the right. And who's behind them? Who knows? As I say, it could just be some, 65-year-old fat guy in his basement. It could be the Russians, it could be the Chinese, it could be the liberal state. You just don't know. But there are all these AI bots coming out, and at the moment it's quite easy to tell, which ones they are, because the images only really take one quick inspection, if you know what you're looking for, of course, and if you expect it. But AI gets better by the day, and soon, people will just make these more and more convincing, and they will be able to say things, start arguments, potentially even start civil disturbances by winding people up. It is one to watch, and it's extremely dangerous, and it can easily be abused by bad actors across the board. This isn't just evil Putin thing. This could be done by the people very much here at home in the West in the liberal regime to push things in any direction they want them to go. Now, this leads us on to the key element of the age of deception and why it's coming around. We often think about social media, and we like social media because you can hear the voices of people outside of the liberal regime. You can try and understand things without the propaganda of the system. But that's obviously a problem for the system. And I think in many ways it actually wants to promote more and more voices online. As much as it makes out, oh, it's so concerned, it wants to have just loads of people there arguing all the time. There's a cacophony of noise. There's AI in there. There's bad actors. And essentially, algorithms can wind people up. As I say, when you get emotionally manipulated, you get emotionally agitated, you can be easily manipulated. And of course, the system knows this. It can push you in a given direction very, very easily. And this is extremely dangerous because, as I say, number one, you can sway public mood easily with misinformation, even if you apologise afterwards. But number two, even if, say, you read a piece of misinformation from one of these AI bots or just some guy out there, repost it, And so if the system doesn't like you or what you stand for, it can just easily arrest you under misinformation while leaving the people it does like untouched. Oh, that was an honest mistake. It's easily done. That's the lawfare of the future. Of course, as technology manufactures reality, or unreality as we should call it, the line between truth and illusion blurs more each day. And with that, if you like, the inner stability we have completely is eradicated. It's eaten alive and people are made disperse. Everyone thinks they know everything. Everyone wants to be first. And again, it's easy to manipulate people. The system is engaging in it itself, but it wants misinfo on your side as a propaganda line as well. It's essentially a tool of mass control at this point, especially when you see, again, some of the stuff you see on the right and the left. It's total populism, and people think that just means, ideas that are popular. It doesn't. It means basically low information that puts forward easy ideas to the mass of people, which makes them feel right and inspires them to push against a given cause. And again, if that's so easily done, if people are so easily controlled, you can see how the powers that be can use this tool and control society, basically. Now, this leads us to point number 5, which is the overzealous will destroy what's left of the West. What I mean by that is many people who think they're, quote, fighting for the good, usually riled up by social media, are often actually being used as agents of chaos, to create enmity between groups. And further to that as well, it's even to play to the other people within the nation. Look at these crazy, hateful people. Aren't they mad? And then, of course, you get this cycle of being addicted to outrage, believing in your system and you're correct, you're on the moral right side. And you just basically get these situations where people are then out on the streets going at each other, which is perfect for the system. To my mind, they want people mad because then you're like a sitting duck, basically, and you're, again, easy to manipulate. As I've said many times on the channel, I believe there's an awakening force across the Western world at the moment, something very deep, spiritually beautiful about roots, a recognition of who we truly are. But if that can sort of be subverted, or at least blanked out by this kind of noisy, relentless, chaotic populist energy, you can see how it can be really destroyed from the inside. And with that, of course, you get this sort of very simplistic, fuck you if you don't like it here type attitude. And you think, look, as I've said many times, I think any movement which is truly going to grow and stand a chance of challenging, if you like, liberal hegemony, it's got to be life-giving. It's got to be deep. It's got to have dimensions across the board, political, personal, warrior, priestly, deeply spiritual, aesthetic, philosophical. All these things make a real movement which can give people something, and it's all there. That's the beauty of it. It's all there in our tradition. But if you like, if we can be turned away from these deeper aspects and basically made mad, then you're just all too easy to take to the cleaners, really. This is why I believe the true right path is sober, it's spiritual, it's ordered, it's not hysterical. That's not sexy to many people who always want action because they're online. Got to take action now. But you'll find you'll just get eaten alive with that. It needs to be soulful. And again, a return to point 1, it's the reawakening of what was fractured a long, long time ago. As just a final little extra on this, to my mind, the only way out of this is to go forward. As I say, you can't go back to the 1950s ideal. And that restoration does begin within. So as you can see, we're facing a challenging, complicated and labyrinthian situation in front of us. But I do believe, that within these things, within the challenge, if you approach it correctly with poise and openness, you can utilize this time to grow spiritually, to find that anchor within yourself for orientation. And what I mean by this is part of our problem in modernity is this idea that we can always find wisdom externally. ChatGPT will tell me what I need to know. Need to rush onto Twitter to get the latest takes. Well, it's all right if you want to do that for practical bits of information. But I think what this age is really calling for is a reorientation with the wisdom that's in yourself already. Now, that doesn't mean you're right about everything in your ego and your mind. Most of the time we're wrong about some stuff, right about others. It means that there is a natural vertical orientation within inside of you, that when it's aligned with your tradition, when you go deeply into the true essence of what you are, you can find a natural wisdom occurs. And we have the backing here. We have hundreds of years of Western tradition to draw upon, even traditions outside of that if you need some context. But my point here is that in these times, I think, where everything's so uncertain on the mental level, we have to sometimes sink away into something more deeper and profound, the heart level, the soul level, the spirit. And that, of course, is the rediscovery of the sacred that led to this fracture in the first place. And as I often say, that sacred implies a natural hierarchy, which we've explored and expressed through our Christian tradition now for hundreds, thousands of years. Not everyone has to do this, not everyone will want to do it, but the point is, if there is that nucleus of people who are aware to this stuff, we actually have a vanguard, if you will, that won't be so pulled and swayed by the noise of the world, that actually has deep roots. And if you like, the corrosion of modernity may attack us on the external level, but not the roots. And if we understand those roots, we can regrow. As always, this is very much my mission on the sister channel, The Sacred Way, about personal and spiritual transformation. Check it out down below. You can also join the Substack, got a call at the weekend coming up. And other than that, do let me know your thoughts down below and subscribe to this channel as well. Do take care, friends.